Okay, great. Thank you, Liz. Like Liz says, I'm Dan Marzu. I'm in the North Central region based out of Wausau, and I do co-lead the Wisconsin Cover Crop Data Network. Let's just see here. Will that? There we go. So this is has several partners. So Michael Fields Ag Institute, the Nature Conservancy, and the USDA Dairy Forage Research Center all provide support and funding support for this. So just a little background. Back in the fall of 2022, we did start uh, testing for nutrient content and forage quality with a survey, and we started taking the first spring samples in the 2024. We have over 220 fields in this study so far, or survey so far. So basically, what we ask the farmers to do is take a 2 foot by 2 foot sample out of their cover crop fields, one in the fall, one in the spring, and then we analyze them for all the nutrients as well as the forage quality and take heights to figure out the biomass. And then there's just some information on, different tools and the stipends that you receive as a participating farmer. So cover crops and forages. First, I want to touch on this. If you are going to use your cover crops as a forage, always be careful of what herbicides you have used in season. There's something that we call a rotational restriction. So basically what this is from the date that you apply your herbicide, there's a amount of time before you can plant a forage crop to make sure that it's basically safe for the animals to use, to eat. So for example, it's fierce XLT soybean. If we planted winter rye, we have 18 months between the application and the planting of that forage crop in order to make sure that it is safe for the animals to eat. So again, you can always go to, we do have this resource available if you're at all interested in looking at that, or better yet, read your herbicide labels. So get into a little bit of the data here. So this is all, this is not replicated. This is just that 2 foot by 2 foot on every farm. And I worked with Bethany Canales, our on-farm research data analysis specialist. So I have to give credit to her for running all the statistics and crunching all these numbers for me. So basically what we did first was take a look at the multi-species versus single species. So multi-species in this case means if we have like a grass, clover, brassica in the mix, and single species, we kind of lumped if it was just like grass species or a clover species, we kind of all lumped them all together. As you could see here that the multi-species height and the dry matter tons were significantly different than the single species. Of course, most of the single species out of the 45, I would say a vast majority of them are looking at like a cereal rye or some other type of grass early on, in the fall. Our relative forage qualities were mainly about the same, but our crude protein and our digestibility was a little bit, significantly higher in our single species than that whole mix. And our milk per ton were very similar. Underneath, you could see the different ranges. So the height, even with the multi-species, I mean, we're at 0 to 27, yielding at 21. So, if we're looking at grazing these covers in the fall, multi-species might be the case. Most of the multi-species were planted right after cereal grain, and the single species were pretty much, right after, corn grain, soybean, planted later on in the fall. So you could take a look at that. In the spring, things kind of evened out. Once we came to, the single species caught up to the multi-species. Of course, in the multi-species, we might have some things that have winter killed. So of course, those things kind of go away, and then we see, maybe a couple of species within that mix make it through this. Through the winter. But as you can see, again, we're having some really high forage quality, 181 to 190 averages. Of course, this ranges quite quite drastically. Crude proteins, we're hovering just below 20. Digestibility is quite high at around 70. Milk per ton, we're hitting those benchmarks. So things are looking good as far as multi-species versus single species. Then I took a look at the different buckets. So we have very, very small numbers, so not a lot of statistics run on this. So I just kind of put out the numbers as in a chart. So here's fall grass, we're around 7 inches, less than a ton of dry matter out there. But looking at these numbers, we're doing fairly decent. Then we get into all these other mixes. We're getting 23 inches tall on the grass legume mixes. Grass legume brassica 20. Mixes greater than 3, we're 21. So there's a fair amount of forage out there if we're taking a look at fall grazing. Um, whether it's dairy or beef. We have some fairly high average forage qualities here. Proteins I'll admit I am not a dairy nutritionist or an animal nutritionist. I am an agronomist, so I'm trying to learn this as I go. But 20s are right around hovering that 20. We're looking pretty good. The digestibilities, that 50 to 60, and milk per tons, we're right there. Continuing on in the spring, um, again, some of these things have kind of, may not have overwintered, so, but still decent heights, and dry matter tons. If you are looking for that, you know, early spring, um, grazing or harvest. Again, a lot of our forage qualities, we're doing pretty well there, as well as some of our proteins, crude protein levels. So if you're interested in learning more about this, we do have this website from Michael Fields. We have a data dashboard, and I'll just go through a couple examples. You click on this little data dashboard icon here, and we actually come up with this. And we do have this, what we call a scenario tool. So this is not recommendations out there. It's more of you can choose what kind of scenario you want to run and kind of get an idea what some of the farmers around in your area that have participated or around the state have participated, and the cover mixes or species that you're looking at on how they're performing. So basically, this looks something like this. So you jump in the scenario tool. We have erosion control, nutrient scavenger. Bill was talking a lot about, taking up nitrogen and the other nutrients. We have something similar with that. How much nitrogen each of these scenarios have taken up, weed suppression. Then we do have some on fall grazing and spring grazing as far as the tonnages and all that. So you go down here. Here we have Greene County. We click on we get a nice little picture, the amount of tons out there. We click on that farm details, and we get further information. Oh, here, let's do this. Further information regarding the practices out there on that particular farm. So here in the Greene County, we had a mix of oats, a millet, and corn. And so you could see all the different planting rates, how much it costs per acre, et cetera. And then we do have all the forage quality information, as well as the nutrient information that's kind of further down on this chart. Couldn't get that screenshot on there, but you can kind of see and compare on what your goals might be on how these covers might fit into your system. Additionally, with this map over here, you can actually go into there and click onto, a county or an area. You can click onto a specific farm and basically get the same information. So you can kind of see what the neighboring farms are doing as far as their cover crops and what kind of results they're getting off of their mixes. And then if you're really geeking out and want to go into the whole bar graphs and all that, we do have little tools that you can actually run all these nice charts and all that and get an idea on what's going on out there. Again, there's the website for the tool. I just wanted to kind of introduce you to it and get you out there and playing around with it. And if you are interested in participating or even learning more about this, here's all my contact information. Feel free to shoot me an email, text message, or phone call, and I'd be happy to talk to you more about this project. So with that, I think we got a couple minutes for questions for myself or for the rest of the crew.